How do you, as a leader of the federal government, how do we help an older demographic come to recognize that this is the pattern that's been building over decades in our budgets, and ask for their help to help find a better balance between young and old alike?
That's the polite way, perhaps,
of steal their money?
Yeah. Since we're gluttons for punishment, we are back for round 2 of Justin Trudeau's interview with the Generation Squeeze podcast.
Let's take a look.
So at Gen Squeeze, when we talk about that theme, we refer to housing should be for homes first and investment second. Of course. And it's quite a cultural shift in Canada, though, for us to actually think that we don't want home prices to rise really any longer. In fact, for the next many, many years, it would be great if they minimally stalled so that people's earnings would have a chance to catch up. But that is a mental shift. That's a mental model shift, and it requires asking an older demographic to come on board with that. Now, I think you were the first senior politician that I'm aware of to actually say out loud when asked by a media person, hey, what do you want to have to happen to home prices? And you said, we don't want them to go up any longer. I'm working hard to have premiums.
Not going up at the same speculative, unsustainable rate that they have been. I mean,
I might even push just in the short term, just like not go up anymore whatsoever, actually.
I'm trying to solve for that by building massive levels of supply, and hopefully that will have a bit of an impact.
Yeah, Trudeau's the one building the massive levels of supply.
Right.
You're just throwing money around and into the municipal bureaucracies and hoping for the best, and nothing gets built when you do that.
Well, and them talking about housing prices not going up anymore or stalling completely, it's not really sustainable. The home prices are supposed to go up with inflation because, again, it is a big investment. You don't want to be pouring, $500,000 plus into a home, and then inflation keeps going up over the next 20 years, but your home value stays exactly the same. That doesn't make sense either in an economy. But what really doesn't make sense is what's happening around here lately, where you're having homes doubling or tripling their price. Like when Ryan and I first got together, he was living in a condo, and it was probably 5 years after we had moved out of the condo when COVID happened. And just for a lark, we went and saw how much other suites in that same building were selling for. And it was 3 times the price in 5 years. That's nuts. That's not supposed to happen. That's what ruins the economy.
Yeah, your home is supposed to go up on aggregate about 3% a year, and that's inflation.
Right. That's normal. That's expected. But doubling or tripling, that's nuts.
So as we have a convergence more and more that we don't want to see the same rate of escalation in home prices, and people like me and groups like Gen Squeeze will say, let's just stall more generally, that'd be an interesting place for ongoing conversation. That is part of the reciprocity, though, that an older demographic could show. Like, hey, we understand that. And in many respects, it doesn't really ask that much of them in terms of their adaptations. It's actually asking more of a younger demographic. We're asking you to figure out how to better plan for retirement down the road when you can't count on home prices driving your security later on. So in fact, it's another adaptation that we're expecting of younger demographic. And I think we should be open to acknowledging that. I'm going to put up a slide that I really do hope your team briefed you on in advance. We did share it. I go every year to the budget lockup, and there's a table, A16, in the budget that every year I madly crunch the numbers into an Excel document, and I send it to my lovely team member, Megan, who right now can't put up her hand because she's filming, to help make it into an infographic. I bring this up because as we're asking a younger demographic to make a lot of adaptations in the housing system to...
I'm just hooked on your choice of animals.
Okay, yes, right, I need to showcase.
There's a T-Rex and a beaver there on the same...
There's a T, and Megan will make the case that the T-Rex is absolutely part of the Canadian animal lexicon, given if you were to travel to, to travel to Alberta and go see some of the great fossils. So I should just, for people listening later on...
elephants are a part of the
elephants are not. The elephant is the elephant in the room.
There we go.
And the elephant in the room is that...
I've known Paul long enough to know he has an answer for everything. I shouldn't have even tried.
The elephant is trying to bring that cliche out, the elephant in the room, that I've done so much media saying that the current federal housing plan is the most comprehensive we've seen nationally in decades. I have been on the record many, many times saying that the $10 a day childcare system is something that was first recommended 50 years ago and half a century of governments did not act on.
I can't believe Trudeau is on a podcast with a bigger narcissist than he is.
I didn't even think that was possible.
Like, this guy just won't be quiet.
And what is with those ridiculous animals for this infographic? Infographics are supposed to be just quick and simple and easy. You're supposed to look at it and get exactly the information that you need. And there might be some symbols or some graphics on it. But that was ridiculous.
Yeah, you should be able to look at an infographic within about 5 to 10 seconds and kind of understand what it's saying. So I got that, I think it was like the top or new spending in the federal budget. But yeah, the animals made no sense whatsoever. No. This may sound weird, but the fact that Trudeau couldn't get it within, like the 5 or 10 seconds, and like, why is there a T-Rex on there? And the guy actually has to explain it. If you have to explain your infographic,
then it's not a good infographic.
Yeah, it's actually pretty bad. So, but this guy just, like, I've done so much media, and you've done so much media. Really? Okay.
All 400 viewers?
Yeah, but like, so much media on this, and this is the most comprehensive housing plan. What? So, traveling around to different cities, handing out hundreds of millions of dollars, waiting for them to build houses. That's not a plan. Like, I'm sorry, but it's not.
Yeah, saying you can put a fourplex on this lot isn't really much of a plan.
Yeah, congratulations. Where's my seal flippers?
And yet I also have to go and do media and say that notwithstanding how historic childcare is right now and the new investments for housing, they are quite modest in comparison by the new spending growing on something like old age security. The magnitude of order of old age security increasing 10 times faster than childcare, 15 times faster than new money for housing. And when I see this kind of depiction of what's happening in budgets, it's hard to see this as the intergenerational reciprocity from an older demographic towards younger. Hey, folks, you're struggling in the housing system. How can we bring other costs of living down for you? This looks like it's actually also asking a younger demographic, in addition to sacrificing somewhat in the housing system, we're also asking you to tolerate more government spending going to the parents and grandparents you love, but relatively less coming to you. I don't think most older people know this. I know we have at Gen Squeeze many people, we call them grandambassadors, who are deeply concerned about the legacy they're leaving for their kids and grandchildren, but are not entirely aware of this age gap in spending. So I wonder, how does a group like Generation Squeeze, how do you as a leader of the federal government, how do we help an older demographic come to recognize that this is the pattern that's been building over decades in our budgets and ask for their help to help find a better balance between young and old alike?
What do you mean ask for their help?
That's the polite way, perhaps.
Of steal their money?
Yeah, 100%. That's the commie way.
Like, ask for the help to find a... Hello? Like, just because you live in a society doesn't mean you owe anyone anything. This is the thing. And this is the part about the far left ideology. It's one of the things I hate the most. Is it's like the world owes you. Newsflash, the world doesn't owe you anything. Like, the world owes you nothing.
But, it is true that years ago it used to be easier to buy a house than it is now. But that has nothing to do with age or time and everything to do with supply versus demand. The problem is the government has increased the demand by bringing 500,000 people a year into this country and is not increasing the supply of housing. And you guys can check out our video on the Century Initiative to see why they've been doing that.
Well, the other thing that they did is they created market conditions that incentivize people to buy houses. And the issue with that was also that the supply was very limited. aka lockdowns. So what happened in COVID? A, the interest rates dropped through the floor, and B, everyone decided, I don't want to live in the city anymore. I don't want to live in urban areas anymore because I want to be away from people. I want to be away from the quote unquote sick people. So you had all these people trying to move out of Toronto and Edmonton and Calgary and all of these, urban areas to more rural based areas. So they wouldn't have to worry about it. And they wouldn't feel like they were cooped up in the concrete jungle. So you had all of these people selling their places in Toronto for high amounts of money because they're selling them to all of the new people coming in, and they're taking that money, and then they're able to overbid on all of these properties that are in the more urban areas. Then you had the Century Initiative population explosion happen 1 year later, and it's a recipe for disaster. So Trudeau has actually, doubled down on this twofold. He created the market conditions that created a housing price explosion via the lockdowns, and then two, with the Century Initiative. So, yeah. Now, and you're saying, oh, well, we're asking, older people. The one thing that I really do pity the younger generation for is they have to deal with this 1.3 trillion dollar government debt. That's what they're going to have to deal with, and their kids and their grandkids.
Well, I think part of it is the solutions that we're actually going to put forward tangibly. Because if you just look at a pictogram like that, you're going to say, okay, you're going to have to, chop those elephants' legs off, or you're going to have to, massively reduce some of the...
Or make a very big beaver.
Maybe a very... Yeah. What we actually have to think about as well is what are those things that can change actually the reality on the ground in a way that doesn't project. I mean, like you said, if young people have other ways and actually realize, okay, they're not going to get the same kind of home buyers plan necessarily that people a generation ago did in terms of what their retirement nest egg will be, those are things that we can look at to try and make sure they happen. I mean, one of the things that always comes up for me is the idea that, on housing, you have a whole bunch of older folks who are living in houses that are too much house for them right now, but their connection to neighborhood, to community, means that no, they don't want to move out to the suburbs or to some different city to be closer to their grandkids. They want to still live in their community's quality of life, and there is no housing that they can afford even to downsize other than staying in their big house. So where you're actually working to increase the amount of apartments or senior assisted living centers in neighborhoods where people currently live in single family homes, that's a piece that you can actually, I don't know that goes directly at the animals challenge here, but it does start to look at the kinds of things that give you a way out that will eventually shift those numbers in a meaningful way.
Now the Prime Minister is telling Canadians how many bedrooms they're permitted to have in their homes, that if you have more bedrooms than you can occupy, that your house is too big for you.
But I'm still trying to even follow what he was even saying there. So he's saying you have these people that have too big of homes, but and they can't move anywhere because it's too expensive, and they can't downsize because it's too expensive. So you have these people that are living in these homes, and you want to bring in senior assisted living centers and apartment buildings.
Yeah, so they want, senior citizens, empty nesters, let's call them, that they don't need a 3-bedroom home anymore because it's just the couple. The kids have grown off and started their own families. And so they want them to move into seniors' residences instead. They don't want you to have your own home anymore.
Right, but guess what, Trudeau? You can't force them to do that.
Oh, they'd probably make a law if they could. Well, let's not get crazy here. I don't want to spread misinformation, right? But I mean, that's kind of what he's implying, which is not a good thing. I mean, like, look at this room that we're in. This was a bedroom until we turned it into a studio. Do we have too many bedrooms in our home? You know, who is the government to come in and tell you what you can or can't do with the rooms in your home?
Well, apparently they can tell you what you can or can't do with your free time.
Drastic changes in budgeting projections are very, very difficult. I mean, when we came in with childcare, when we came in with dental care, which is from kids all the way up to seniors, when we move at pharmacare on prescription contraceptives and insulin, none of those specifically seniors facing, but all of them mattering across generations. These are things that we got an awful lot of pushback on, and it's a shame to see the largest housing investment in Canada's history is that a mouse or a mole? Or
it's a mole. A mouse would have been rude.
There we go.
It's a mole.
It's a mole. These are things that we're facing as much pushback as I think we could have borne.
I think one of the challenges in Canada today is that many a citizen, many a voter doesn't recognize that whether we're talking about you in Ottawa or Premier Eby here in BC or Premier Ford in Ontario, notice my nonpartisanship there, everybody.
3 parties, very good.
All of them are running deficits right now outside of a recession. And in many respects, the research would show that that exists now because several decades ago, our governments recognized that as baby boomers go from younger folks into retirement, the ratio of workers to retirees was going to transform. So when boomers started out, there were 7 working age people for every retiree. Now, as boomers retire, there's only 3 workers for every retiree. And we can understand why our older loved ones have every reason to want the same, if not better, benefits. But the ability to pay for that is not nearly as straightforward as it was some decades ago.
And that's a really good point that Kershaw just made. Our government has kind of structured things like a pyramid scheme in that the working age people, the younger people, pay for the retirement of the older population. And because we're not having nearly as many kids as we used to, there's not as many workers to pay for the retirement of the older folks. So what they're doing is they're bringing in more adults as immigrants instead of encouraging Canadians to have more children, or instead of finding another way to structure retirement plans that doesn't involve having so many working age people supporting a smaller retiree population.
Well, but this comes back to the circular argument of, why do you think people are using their home as a retirement vehicle?
Well, that's just it. Because, I mean, who even knows if by the time you and I get to retirement age that CPP or OAS is going to be there for us, right?
Right. And then all that, they could decide to terminate it. Then
what?
Then you may ask, well, wait a minute, where's the, tens of thousands of dollars that I contributed to the CPP? And they'll just say, oh, it's gone.
Well, and what if you need, more advanced care, like in a nursing home? Those can be like $6,000 a month plus. I don't know the average person that can afford that. So the logic is that you would sell your home and then use that money to provide for yourself in a nursing home. I mean, I don't understand why they are trying to take money away from people who own homes.
Well, they're trying to take money away from everybody, apparently.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line, unfortunately.
And so they can decide how you live, where you live, what you eat, and
where you're allowed to go, what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
The liberals, they're in favor of big government. They want to control your life. They want you reliant on them. The conservatives, on the other hand, want you to be self-sufficient.
Well, they want to, as Pierre said, if he could rename, the party, he'd name it the Mind Your Own Damn Business Party, because he wants a government that gets out of your way, leaves you alone, focuses on the big issues, and lets you live your life.
In the mid-90s, the federal government actually identified that problem, and they changed our Canada pension plan and said, hey, boomers, while you're still working, we need to collect more revenue from you right now. And that's one of the reasons why the CPP is identified around the world as one of the best pension plans available. There was a plan to replace old age security. It was going to be a new seniors benefit. It was in the budget in 96, 97, and 98, and then poof, kind of evaporated by 99. And at the time, they brought premiers together to talk about the challenges to plan for an aging population down the road. And premiers participated, but didn't adjust how they would raise revenue for medical care. So those are the big challenges. Those are the big things that are growing in the budget right now. But you're having to pick up the bag from poor planning past decades ago. How do we ask an older demographic to say, hey, how do young and old like lean into like providing political cover for people like you to make some adaptations?
Well,
Political cover? Are you serious, guy? He's been in power for about a decade.
Yeah. He's been in power longer than our son has been alive.
And the problem is he's just deciding to fix all this stuff now.
Because it's almost election time again.
Well, and he's screwed in the polls. That's the only time that Trudeau ever does anything, is when he's screwed in the polls. Otherwise, he takes vacations and fires women and, engages in scandals and all of that. Well, he doesn't really care about that, at all. He does that all the time. But this is the thing. How to provide some political cover. Dude, you do these things, you do the controversial things in your first year when you're riding high.
Especially if you have a majority.
What did Trudeau do in his first year? Nothing. He went on vacation. Like that's all he did. He changed some words in the national anthem, went on vacation. He didn't start doing any of the quote-unquote hard stuff until he realized, oh, the Canadian public wants me to work on the hard stuff. But they found that only one person was listening to them, and that was Pierre Poilievre. And that's why they've been leading in the polls for a year. They don't believe you, and they don't trust you.
I mean, one of the adaptations we made early on, 6 months in after we got elected in 2015, was we changed the Canada Pension Plan in a significant way that didn't make any difference right now, but will absolutely make a difference in the kind of pensions available to a young person now who retires 30 years from now. Like, those were shifts that we knew needed to happen. It was actually Bill Morneau who really drove this forward, and there was a lot of pushback. Actually, Hassan Youssef and the Canadian Labour Congress were the ones who were really driving this, and we got it done within no fanfare. Nobody paid much attention to it. Conservatives still attack us because we were raising payroll taxes, according to them, to secure generations' future. But I mean, that challenge of doing things that are structural changes that set that path towards fairness. Anytime you're doing something with a long-term bent in politics, people say, and I remember in opposition doing the same thing, I say, oh yeah, no, when Mr. Harper just announced this change, well, he'll be in his 11th mandate when this actually makes a difference, and we all sort of have a chuckle.
So we've discussed this before. What the Conservatives had done under Stephen Harper was they had extended the age of retirement from 65 to 67. And this was because retirement at age 65 back in the 70s, when CPP was first instituted, people would live about 6 additional years beyond retirement age. Now we're finding that people are living on average about 19 years beyond retirement age. So that's a huge amount of time that CPP is expected to sustain these people. So what Harper did was they had increased the age from 65 to 67, and that was supposed to take effect, I believe it was in 2023. So people would be working 2 additional years longer and also not taking CPP during those 2 years. So that's a net of 4 years savings. The Liberals decided to cancel that and make everybody start paying extra CPP instead.
Well, and the other thing is by the end of the century, the life expectancy for Canadians is supposed to be around 91, which is 26 years longer than the age of retirement. And the main reason why the Conservatives raised the age is because they didn't want to raise the contribution level. Because people value their paychecks.
Right. So right now, at a time where inflation is high, housing prices are astronomical, grocery prices are through the roof. The Trudeau Liberals are taking more money out of your paycheck to pay for CPP instead of when you get to 65, you have to work an extra 2 years.
Well, and he gave them, all of this notice in terms of the people that were going to be having to work until 67, so they could make different financial arrangements if they didn't want to work past 65. So that's part of this.
Yeah, that's why it was instituted under Harper, but wouldn't have taken effect until, again, I believe it was 2023.
And so, what Trudeau did is he said, no. So we're jacking it down to 65 and everybody pays more in terms of their CPP contributions. So we're taking more from the Canadian public.
Right now.
And that's what the Conservatives were criticizing. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Because it is a payroll tax. I mean, it takes money from you right now. It takes money from your payroll right now and gives it to the government. That's a tax.
Well, and the other thing that they were finding is that people were choosing to work past 65 anyway.
I mean, some people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Some people really do
Exactly.
enjoy their workplaces and their coworkers and the work that they do. Look at some physicians. I had a physician who was in his late 70s. Some people really, really enjoy immersing themselves in their work.
And now I'm in government and saying, okay, that kind of thinking of actually setting things up so that there's a long tail and actual shift matters. But in order to do that, we have to have, as a society, a much more sophisticated political conversation about what's going on in our finances than I think the current tendencies are, whether it's around what social media is feeding to us, whether it's the clickbait necessity of the right bumper stickers and TikTok videos to get a message across, to try and amplify fear or anger or frustration rather than try to solve for it. Like, we're in a very, very difficult time to try and have reasonable conversations about responsible, earnest things to do that are going to leave the country and the world in a better place.
Social media is just reflecting what Canadians are feeling. Canadians are angry. Canadians are upset. Canadians are scared.
Yeah, Trudeau will have you think, oh, everything's fine. It's just the big bad social media and the big meanie conservatives that are, putting out these videos, and they're way better at social media than we are. And consarn it, that's not right. No.
Again, it's the job of the government to fix the problems. It's the job of the government to not create new problems. Instead of listening to Canadians, they're just doing whatever they want and creating a royal mess of everything.
Well, you're in a room full of people who I think would like to support you in that endeavor to find more of that nuance and that, and rather than just the bumper sticker in the conversation. So let's talk about how we can do that more. Yeah, I will draw attention to léger polling again, though. That would. Oh, I can't. Why can I not move forward? How discouraging. Oh, there we are. How nice. A graphic like the one I just showed does help to better understand why a younger demographic is worried more and more and becoming cynical about politics more and more, that the momentum that governments have is more oriented towards the later in the life course than earlier on. And I take very seriously your observation about the Canada Pension Plan. Done in 2016, that adaptation is a big deal. And for the millennials and Gen Zs in the room, when they come to retirement, that will be the change that was made will be integral to them having lower levels of poverty. There's no doubt about it. But again, notice it was an adaptation largely asked of a younger demographic. And so I think that the big challenge for us going forward is how do we ask our parents and our grandparents to lean into a political conversation that says we want to protect you in your retirement and we want you to leave the legacy you want for your kids and grandchildren.
So here's why I think young people feel that governments are focused on the older generations instead of them. So all their lives, they've grown up hearing that if you go to university, you study really hard, you'll get a good job, you can buy a home, start a family, and you can live the good life, right? And now they're finding that dream is broken. That's not true anymore. The other thing that's happening is they're going to these post-secondary institutions and they're being indoctrinated with left-wing propaganda. And so they're being told that the Liberal Party is the party that I should be voting for, or the NDP. They're also on the left. And the Conservatives are bad. Conservatives are evil. They don't have my best interest at heart. So now they're getting out into the real world and they're finding that, wow, the Liberals, with the help of the NDP, have really, really, really screwed up this country. But, you know, big bad conservatives, I can't vote for them either because they only care about, I don't know, like corporate Canada or whatever. So they're politically homeless right now. And I think that's why you get a result like that from Leger.
I think so. And the other thing is they leave school and they're looking around, they're saying, where's my 6-figure salary I was promised? Well, you know, this isn't right. This is unfair. The 99% are taking one for the team, and the 1% are enslaving everybody. And again, it's as a result of the indoctrination. So, they're probably annoyed because older people have been lying to them all throughout their university days and all, from when they're a young kid, and they enter the real world, as Tanya said, and nothing is sitting there waiting for them, and no one is there to shower them with a house and a car and all of the lovely essentials of life that, guess what, you have to work for.
That's part of the challenge. That's what a good example is the fight we're currently having over the capital gains inclusion rate. Right, we know that unlocking close to $20 billion to be able to invest in housing opportunities, to be able to put towards the things that young people are going to need now, by asking not older generations specifically, but those who've done very well, particularly amongst older generations, to not to pay a little more, just to make a little less profit when they sell off extremely profitable investments.
Well, that narrative kind of changed now, didn't it?
Only 0.13% of Canadians with an average annual income of $1.4 million will pay more on their capital gains. For 99.87% of Canadians, personal income taxes on capital gains will not increase.
Yeah, because they know it's so unpopular.
What happened to the 0.03% of Canadians?
It's garbage. It's pure garbage. And the Liberals could find that $20 billion that they're saying will come from the capital gains tax if they cut elsewhere. Look at Bill C-63. They've just estimated that bill will cost $200 million to administrate. And that's 1% of your total right there. So
and
don't put that bill in.
And that means they're hiring a bunch of new public servants too.
Right.
So. And
look, the carbon tax program also costs $200 million to administrate. So why don't you not have that program as well? There's your 2% already. You just need 98 more to get to that $20 billion.
And the political debate around that has, is got some very, very loud voices on the headwind side on this, and it's there's mixed up with a lot of cynicism. It's mixed up with a lot of disinformation. But fundamentally, the calculation we made is no. If we're going to talk about fairness for every generation, we're going to actually have to try and rebalance things at least a little bit.
Yeah, so you're thinking about the rebalancing side on the revenue side, rebalancing in terms of okay, I would love to dig into that more, but I need to be disciplined and make sure I hand over the microphone to others in the room. So let me wrap up my part of the conversation with you this way. In the fall, the United Nations is going to be having a summit of the future. It's the first of its kind where the UN will focus on generational fairness. And I've already identified that the international community is identifying the most recent federal budget as leadership. And I think there's opportunities for us in Canada to lead still further by taking a cue from a country like Wales, where they've enshrined into legislation an act to promote generational fairness. And so that has people at Gen Squeeze wondering, as we head towards the next fall economic statement, might there be room to initiate an act to safeguard the well-being of present and future generations? One that would appoint a minister to have responsibility for that issue, for generational fairness, an advisory body to guide us to get to that better place, and then somebody like a commissioner in the Auditor General's office to monitor and report annually.
Do you notice that the left, they treat everybody like children, and they present everything to you like your children.
Yeah, they really talk down to Canadians.
Like everything that this guy has shown, and this is like professionally done, folks.
It's cartoonish.
Yeah, it's childlike.
Well, and he's presenting it to millennials, which, I mean, I'm 37, I'm a millennial. And also Gen Z, which is, 18 to mid-20s, let's say. Not children. These are voters that he's talking to. People deciding the fate of the country, and he's talking to them like they're 5-year-olds.
Well, and you contrast that to the way the Conservatives talk to voters and the way the Conservatives present to voters. It's polished, it's professional, and it doesn't look like it's been made for a kindergarten class. So, but this is the thing, like, just you can't take anything these guys say or create seriously, because it seems just like you are constantly being belittled. Case in point, Chrystia Freeland.
Is that something that doable in the months ahead?
I think it's a really interesting idea, and I think it's something that you and I can probably work together on.
All right. Well, that's a great way to end our part of the conversation. I think in Canadian politics, regardless of our political affiliations, we've kind of lost the habit of saying thank you to our elected representatives.
So we didn't get to see the Q&A.
No, we didn't. And that's what Brian Lilly was talking about. If you remember when we did our Generation Squeeze video, we used Brian Lilly's talking points. And that's what he had referenced. So I really wonder what went on in that Q&A and why it was not made available to the public.
Yeah, because sounds like that was supposed to be a very friendly room. Was there some unfriendly questions asked, I wonder?
Or were there some unfriendly answers given, perhaps?
Right. Maybe on housing taxes? Maybe. We don't know. But thankfully, we will say our thank you. Thankfully, we've come to the end of this, painful podcast.
Yeah, it was a 2-day job because we had enough yesterday. We had to call it quits.
Yeah. So, and we had a lot of work to do today. But anyhow, that's it for our journey into the far left.
Make sure you check out our videos on Generation Squeeze. Make sure you check out our other video on the Century Initiative and part 1 to this video, because they paint a very interesting picture of housing and immigration in Canada.
And I know a lot of you hate listening to Trudeau. You may already be gone. But it is important. It's important to know what he's saying, and it's important to know what the Liberals are saying. As much as it pains you to listen to it, you need to know what these talking points are, because when you're having conversations with people, they're going to be repeating Trudeau's talking points. So you need to have an idea of what they're talking about before you engage in these conversations. That's the way you'll know how to answer it and how to counter it. So so that's just one thing to consider. You can do whatever you like with your time. I'm not Trudeau, and I'm not going to force you to listen to certain things or not. But it's
yeah,
just
we
a
don't dictate
suggestion.
what you do with your free time, do we?
So anyway, what I will dictate is this is the end of the video. So
Thanks for watching.
if you haven't yet, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We haven't asked that in a long time, but figure we'll ask it now. So have a good day, everybody.
Take care, everyone.